Observe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 31 of the Observe and Rapport show. I'm Kyle Brennan, joined as ever by my beautiful co-host, Keith Sullivan. Keith, how we doing today?
Sorry, I took a sip at a bad time. We're doing very well. Couldn't be better, obviously.
We're in a new spot.
Yeah, this is beautiful.
I'm getting some work done in the office upstairs, so I had to move all of my shit down into the living room, and we improv'd a nice little set.
I mean, I'm very impressed. I had nothing to do with this. This looks great.
Yeah.
The plants, the books. It makes more sense.
Looks official. Next thing we need is just an Observe and Rapport sign behind us somewhere.
We should do a neon sign.
My birthday's coming up, and so is Keith. So if anyone wants to get us a nice little present,
we'll start a GoFundMe or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that it's we need a little signage. It's due time. What do you think?
I think so. So I wanted to start with a book I just read that's very relevant.
Okay.
So me and my wife just found out that, or not just found out, but we are having a baby.
Yeah, who cares?
Due at the end of the year.
Well, everyone's always so like, oh my God, Just
kidding.
the
funniest thing is guys telling their guy friends versus girls telling their girlfriends that you're having a baby.
Yeah.
I literally called my best friends and they're like, nice, dude.
Yeah. Girls, I mean, forget it. It's a whole thing. Guys, I mean, like, good for you.
Yeah, it's like a little slap on the back.
Yeah.
Like, all right, man.
Everything works.
Yeah.
Look at you.
But anyway, I just, speaking of books, which this podcast is mostly about, read a book called The New Dad's Playbook because I like to be prepared for everything. So,
reading a book can prepare you for having children.
That was sarcastic.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
no book will ever.
No, I didn't seek out this book. Another dad gave this book to me that he read, had a baby. He thought it would be helpful to me. I didn't want to read it because I was like, how much is a book going to prepare me? But it was lying around and
I read one. It helped a little.
It helped. Well, what I liked about this book is, 99% of pregnancy or parenting books are very generic or they're catered to the mother specifically.
Yes.
This book was literally just like, hey, dads, this was written for you. Mm-hmm. It's The New Dad's Playbook.
Right.
It's written by Benjamin Watson, who he played tight end in the NFL for like the Patriots, the Browns, the Ravens. And when I saw it was Benjamin Watson, I was like, what's this tight end doing writing a book?
That's crazy.
So it like overall, I thought it was a very helpful book for someone who didn't really know anything. It's funny because as I was reading it, you could tell it's kind of catered to like he wrote it for his like kind of dumb NFL teammates.
Yes,
who know nothing about.
So it's no vocab really.
No. It's well written, but like you can tell he was the audience for when he was writing it was his teammates. And he's like, listen, sometimes you got to do the dishes, guys.
Right.
Like, very obvious things.
Right.
And that was only a small.
Well, that's
part
why
of the
it's like, yeah, we know what to do.
Yeah. No, I mean. There were some parts of the book
what
that
were the
like
parts that
obvious.
You were like, oh, okay, that's good advice.
No, there was good advice just about, honestly, it wasn't really like advice. It was more just like, here's what to expect.
Right. That's
it just lays it out for you, which is like, because you know nothing about the female anatomy when they get pregnant. So it's like, here's what your wife is experiencing in terms of pain because her body is changing this way.
Yeah.
And the baby is taking blood and taking, some bone density from the mom and, expect your wife to experience these sorts of pains and here's what you can do to help her. And it does that through each stage. So at like the first trimester, the second trimester, and then it's like the day of the birth. Here's what you can expect your wife to feel. Here's what the doctors might tell you. Here are the decisions you might have to make. So it wasn't like advice. Like there wasn't anything where I'm like, okay, now I know what to do. Mm-hmm. But it was very good at just giving me a sense of like, okay, I'm much more prepared now that I had read that book than going into the hospital the day of just completely blind.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you from experience, like the hospital was wild. Just that, if it depends on a lot of things, right? But it's so quick how, like it's amazing when it happens. Like, okay, like I'm going to have a baby. But then comes the time where she goes, my water broke. And you're like, what? And you go, okay, oh, all right. And then like you just, right, the bag, like, you know, all that. And then you get to the hospital and it's just another day for them. So they're like, oh, okay, you're having a baby. Congratulations. Come on in. We're going to take care of you, whatever. And you're just like, all right. So everything's going all right. Everything's going good. And for me, my wife, she was so done with being pregnant that she was like, she literally looked at me and she goes, I'm pushing this thing out of me in 45 minutes. And like, I was like, 45 minutes. That's such a, I could tell that she was in tune with what was happening, the movements, the contractions, whatever. I could tell that that was real. And dude, on the dot, 45 minutes, she pushed this thing out. And it was the most, I mean, it's cliche to say, but it is the most incredible thing you've ever seen. I implore you to be at her bedside with the other doctor and the nurse, and you know, there's usually like a student there now who's watching and taking notes on your wife's vagina. It's pretty incredible. But yeah, man, it's definitely something that you can read about, you can watch movies, but that moment is burnt into my head, and it will never leave. The colors, the smells, the feeling, you know, this thing that she's been working so hard to build and create, and you're so worried about it, but also you're happy, and then it's there on her chest, and dude, it's taking its first breaths. You're watching it happen in front of you. You cannot believe your eyes. You really are in for a treat.
Yeah.
It's going to be something.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
You should be.
And I'm not naive enough to think that like, oh, preparing with books and podcasts and videos and all that stuff is going to prepare
me.
It's not. Like, but I like to just...
But also, if I can just talk more, if you... like, you're going to be... Like, what? Like, no one has ever not figured this out.
Yeah, that's what always gives me solace, is like knowing that people a lot dumber...
Way dumber.
...have raised kids and been fine, you know?
With addiction issues, with mental issues, bro, like I mean, like depression, whatever it is. I mean, all these things factor into a childhood and whatever, and how great that can be. But mostly, there's 8 billion people, and they have parents.
Yeah, statistically speaking,
it's
like flying in an airplane and freaking out that you're going to crash. It's like there've been a lot of successful ones.
1 in 11 million chance, I believe. Yeah. By the way, my For You page or whatever on Instagram,
it's just plane crashes.
Has found out that my biggest fear is dying in a plane crash. And it sends me just all these like AI recreations of real plane crashes and the black box recordings. And I'm like, dude, you find out this shit happens more often than you think. I mean, like, not every day or whatever, but we talked about this recently. There was one 2 months after 9/11, like just 2 months after 9/11, a plane crashed in Queens and 150 people died, 5 people on the ground. And it was because like TWA or whatever didn't like properly repair a tail fin. You know, people are dumb.
It's wild how much the algorithms really know you better than you know yourself.
Yeah.
Like you know that flying is your like maybe your biggest fear.
Well,
I didn't. Or
it's just terrifying.
Yeah,
you know?
Terrifying. But like the algorithm is just like, yeah, we know.
They're like, you know what, this guy definitely can't deal with.
Yeah.
You know
what you're scared of?
Yeah.
We're gonna just send you a shit ton of that. Even like before Lauren found out she was pregnant, like our feed was just parenting advice.
Yeah.
The entire time.
Of course.
We're like,
of course.
How the hell?
Yeah, there was a story, everyone knows it, but like there was a guy who found out his daughter was pregnant because
Target.
Yeah,
Target. It's an advertising story. So I'm in advertising, and it was about a dad sued Target, or maybe it was TJ Maxx or one of those like big box retail stores, and the dad kept getting pamphlets for discounts for diapers and like baby stuff, and he didn't find out that his like 16-year-old daughter was pregnant until maybe month 8. But he tried to sue Target, but Target actually knew based on data collection of some sort.
Things she was searching for.
Yeah, things he was searching for and everything, and they were serving her ads essentially. It was before, I don't know if it was before the internet, but it was when you were getting, actual
mail.
Those like newsletter type things in the mail. And he sued Target, and I think he won because the data they were collecting was technically on a minor since he was under 18. Yeah.
Can't do anything to a kid, huh?
Yeah.
Can't even hit him.
It was wild, dude. The advertising world is crazy. I remember I was doing advertising for an airline company. I won't mention the name, but we got a customer complaint.
Right.
And the actual like airline reached out to us and was like, hey, we got this customer complaint. Can you do something about it? And the complaint was from a Indian woman, like from India, who was living in Canada.
Okay.
And she got served an ad about flying home to India. And she thought it was racist or assumptive. And we took it seriously. But then as we like read through the email more and looked at the campaign, we were like, wait, it was accurate. She was
going home? Had to eventually?
She was an Indian expat in Canada, and we were targeting her for flights back home to India.
Oh, interesting.
So we were like...
So you were right.
Yeah, we were right.
The guy who sued Target, like, what were the grounds for suing? Like, why would he... Like, what did they do to her, Target?
I don't remember off the top
You know what I mean?
of my
Like, what's
head.
the problem? Like, she was... It's not like they knocked her up, you know?
I think this was, like, well before the days of, like, people just being really comfortable with really targeted ads.
Mm-hmm.
So the guy...
Like, how did you know this about me?
He thought they were, like, spying on him.
This was, like, before the
Nowadays,
Patriot Act. Yeah.
Nowadays, you search for Nikes on the internet. You know that ad's going to be following you for the next month.
See, this is the thing. It's all inch by inch, Kyle. It's inch by inch. Prison can become home, pal. You just got to give it enough time. We're all going to be living in our own little cubes.
Yeah.
You'll see.
Yeah, this other book I'm reading is called The E-Myth Revisited. I don't know why I picked it up. I just thought it would be interesting. It was a short book, so I figured I could read it in a couple days about how to start your own business.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this guy, Michael Gerber, who's like a serial entrepreneur, wrote this book, and I've heard it mentioned on a number of different podcasts by entrepreneurs, like Chris Williamson, Tim Ferriss have all mentioned it. And, you know, I don't really have any intention to start my own business, but I was just curious to understand about maybe like kind of like the baby book. Like if I'm a little bit more prepared and knowledgeable about some of these things, it can help me, you know, carve certain paths, whether it's the blog, the newsletter, the Instagram. We have all these sorts of things that we could potentially turn into a business, but what the E-myth is basically the entrepreneurial myth, which is everyone assumes that if you're passionate or skilled enough at some some field, whether it's like baking pies or mathematics or you're a social media creator, whatever it is, a lot of people naively assume that if you're good enough at that, the work essentially, you can build a business and be profitable in that sense. But what he explains is that there's actually 3 different types of people in a business. There's the innovator, who basically creates the idea and tries to drive new things forward and is more of an ideas person. There's the technician, the person who like actually does the work, who does, the finances, the accounting, the output, basically creates the product and like sells it. And then there's the manager who kind of like oversees everything, makes sure it's running smoothly. And a lot of entrepreneurs naively assume that they can do all 3. But what he explains, and he compares it actually to McDonald's, is you want to build a business that you can recreate 5,000 times and it can run 100% without you even being involved, which is really interesting. So it's maybe not, the book isn't necessarily written for like an entrepreneur, like a creator, social media influencer, because you are the business in that sense. But if you are trying to open like a bakery, you want to be able to not be working from 4 a.m. to 9 p.m. at night. So how do you sort of systematize everything within that, like McDonald's, where the product at McDonald's isn't the hamburger. The product is, kind of the brand and like the story of McDonald's.
The experience.
The experience, right? So McDonald's, like you can start there today and you're getting the same instructions that a new hire in Oklahoma is getting.
And it's interesting, you're right, because entrepreneurs, like we've all thought like, man, what's like $1 million idea, business, whatever. You never think of it that way.
Yeah.
You always think like, oh, I'm going to come up with something that nobody has ever done or whatever. But like the reality is that people just kind of want like a familiarity and experience that you can, brand and whatever and make it your own. And also you talked about something important, I think, called, just the idea of delegation. Like I have heard so many millionaires, there's all these people now who go up to millionaires on the street, Beverly Hills, whatever, and they interview them. And they all say like, I didn't make my first million until I started delegating the work. Like you can't do it all. Everyone thinks they can do everything, but you really can't. And like, you don't really have the time to truly be the mastermind behind any business And until you're really delegating half the work, because it's just too much. You'll never do it all. So it's like when you watch The Founder, I mean, you see McDonald's didn't really take off until there were like 4 or 5 other people in the room who were giving him advice or telling him it's more of a real estate thing, not a restaurant thing. All that shit like you would never think of, you know? So you have to be willing to work with people, but, you know, also at the same time, it's hard to do that because it's rare to find people. Yeah, I have people who reach out to me, right? We make content. I have people who reach out to me. They're trying to tell me to do this, to do that, to do that. Why don't we team up and we'll do this? And I'm like, I just think that you don't know. Like, why do I have to listen to you?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Because there's an organic element to a business.
That's the difficult part is how do you make it uniquely yours?
Yes.
Like, I've dealt with it as a manager in my regular job, which is you feel a sense of control over a certain task that I've performed to my standards every day for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And now I got this new guy that I have to train up, and he's not going to be able to do it to the way that I like it done.
Let me ask you something about training youngsters. Mm-hmm. Have you found that young people are just stupid now? Have you found that? Incapable, unwilling, lazy, shy, dare I say autistic, can't look you in the eye, can't... It's more often than I remember it. I remember when I was young and 20 and coming into the business, I was a go-getter. I was somebody who was like, let me take care of everything. I'll do all the things you want me to do. I mean, these kids now, I don't know if it's COVID, I don't know if it's AI, I don't know if it's the phones, but they're just not, there's no fire.
Oomph.
Yes.
No oomph.
There's no oomph.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I'll never make generalizations about a whole generation.
Well, I will.
Because, you know, boomers probably said the same thing about us when we were coming into the workforce, you know?
Sure. But at least we cared. We showed, you know what? They used to, I remember getting in trouble for caring too much. They'd be like, hey, dude, calm down. You're not going to change the world here.
Yeah, and I wonder how much...
This kid thinks he knows everything.
I wonder how much of that is generational, meaning like the kids themselves, something has changed, but also how much of it is the schooling of what they're being taught, right? Because when you come, or the parenting too, when you come from a household and a schooling system that demands really hard work and standards and timelines, and
that's true.
They don't put up with excuses, right? The dog ate my homework. Well, too bad. You get an F,
right?
You know, so dealing with the consequences. I think for us coming into the workforce, you know, we felt that almost anxiety of just like, well, I need to prove myself. I need to ask for more work. I need to ask the boss, hey, do you need anything? Can I stay late? Like, I'll come in early, you know, kind of have that go-getter attitude.
Those things, yeah.
And I would always feel guilty if I wasn't doing something, where I was just like, all right, give me something. I don't know how to do anything, but just like, tell me how to do something. I'll figure it out. Yeah. And I think this new generation, and again, not to make generalizations, I'm sure there's plenty of people who are more go-getter than us. But maybe I have found, I would say socially, definitely regressed.
It's the technology. I had a kid who was, there was something going on, you know, there was some kind of a water flow alarm in the building, and we couldn't find the new kid. He wasn't anywhere to be found, right? Go into a filter storage room. He's in there with his VR goggles on, right? Playing a video game. And I'm like, hey, whatever your name is, you know, what are you doing? And he was like, oh, I'm working out. I'm doing my workout. And I'm like, yeah, well, there's something going on and we need to go, whatever. And like, it's fine, whatever. You know, you get caught screwing around. But like, the kid had his VR. I mean, he's literally not here. You know, he's in some virtual gym doing, you know, aerobics, and I'm like, this is just crazy.
I think so much of it, especially in like an office environment, because when I was fortunate enough when I was like 18, 19, 20 to have internships in the city where I was going in 5 days a week, you know, interacting with people whose titles were like intimidating. You know, I was talking to like a vice president or, you know, some important title or manager who was actually giving me and delegating me their work that probably was worthless to them at the time, but it felt like a serious job. I had to tuck in my shirt, wear uncomfortable shoes, go into an office, sit at like a corner, you know, the end of someone else's desk with a tiny laptop and work for 8 hours. But also I had to be able to communicate. They would make me give presentations and stuff. So I just learned a lot about the dynamics of office culture.
Yep.
You know, making sure that you're nice to the receptionist, you're nice to the IT guys because they help you out when your laptop's broken, talking to people, and actually eating lunch at like the lunch table.
Yes,
and
you
meeting new people, right? And I think COVID certainly played a huge factor because kids in a certain age range, whether it was in college or in high school, they lost those 2 years potentially of internships. But not only that, it's coming into the workforce. They don't have that 5-day-a-week experience of talking and interacting with your coworkers, making bonds and friendships and stuff.
Yeah.
And this isn't always
This is
the
why I
case.
feel like happy hours, people used to talk about them like in a bad way, but like they are essential.
My first job, we probably went to 4 happy hours a week.
It's so important.
And always would go out after. We'd stay out late at night, and a lot of those coworkers are still some of my good friends to this day.
It forms bonds.
And but yeah, I think socially it's definitely regressed where I've seen less of an effort to introduce themselves. I wouldn't say it's entitlement because I think a lot of these kids are
Definitely not.
They're
It's
smart.
not entitlement.
They're
no.
smart, and a lot of them are very brilliant. Like one kid we had like wrote code to like automate some process for us, but he never communicated like, hey, I did this, or hey, is it okay if I did this? And hey, I finished it. Is there anything else you needed?
Right.
He kind of just like finished it and then waited for me to give him more work. So that part is interesting. And I would also say, the other thing I noticed was the wardrobe. And I've heard this from multiple people in different fields where, you know, whether the accepted attire is like business casual or smart casual, whatever it is. And a lot of these Gen Z kids will come in and like not give a fuck about that. Like they'll wear, you know,
pajamas.
Yeah, they'll wear like ridiculous outfits. And I've seen it firsthand, and also I've heard from other people.
Do you say anything as a manager? It's hard to.
Personally, I don't care.
Right.
But it's more so like, it's also just a rite of passage where like in advertising, everyone kind of just dresses like this, you know, like a flannel or a t-shirt, jeans, whatever. It's very casual, but it's a rite of passage. Your first week, you kind of dress like an idiot. You know, you tuck in your shirt.
Yeah.
You wear dress shoes.
Yeah.
You show,
I do it too.
You
like,
show the like sort of effort of like, hey, I'm taking this seriously. It's my first week. I'm going to figure out the office culture for a week or two, and then slowly, gradually get more casual as I go in. But now kids are just coming in with like, you know, a Carhartt
like
t-shirt.
Crocs and
and like
Tim Dillon, not to like do his bit or whatever, but he was talking about this issue, and he was like, he thinks that it's because these kids have figured out that the system, the country, it's kind of a scam. And what he means by that is, you know, if you're late or whatever, they'll say, hey, you were late. And they'll go, yeah, well, I'm gay. And they go, oh, well, okay. Well, you know, it's okay, you know, and like, and they're not like, whatever. Like the point is, or they'll say, you know, yeah, well, you know, my mom's got schizophrenia or something. And it's like, well, okay, well,
no,
and you can't fuck with people about that shit anymore.
No, what I understood about, and I agreed with a lot of what he said on one particular podcast, which is like the fact that we came into a world where previously it was expected to have these like, at the time they were just accepted norms, right? You come into the office 5 days a week, you show up early if you're the new guy, you tuck in your shirt, you know, you do the hard work, you ask for more work, you stay late. And I think with COVID, it kind of just like shook all those norms up.
Yeah.
And even me as someone who came into that world was just like, yeah, all this is bullshit. We don't have to be in the office 5 days a week. I can wear whatever I want. I'm on Zoom calls half the day. So why do I need to have all these
There was an
formal
occupational
sort of
revolution.
regulations? And I think Gen Z came into that world like that, where it was just like, all these norms are bullshit. So I give them, again, that benefit or innocence where they're just like, well, why? Like, I never had to wear...
Why does it matter?
I never had to wear a tie.
Yeah,
So why should I, if I'm in the office
and to a
twice
point,
week,
they have a point.
Yeah, they do.
You know, I mean, like, truly, what does it matter as long as I'm doing the work?
I also don't care. Like, you can wear whatever you want. But I think objectively, there are people who kind of just, you know, have that sense of just like, it's sort of just a sign of respect.
Yeah.
To just, you know, dress appropriately.
You know what I think it is? You know,
even if it is bullshit, which I kind of agree with.
I have these, one of the best parts of my day is my walk to the train. And you can really, it's very early. The birds are chirping, the crickets are chirping, and, the sun's barely out. And I have this time to talk to walk and think, and walking helps you think. And I was like, you know what I think the problem is? It's because we know too much about the world. This started because I saw these Halloween decorations, and I was like, Halloween's just not the same anymore. Like, no one gives a shit about Halloween anymore. Young kids, whatever.
Over the age of like 12.
Yeah, but like, it used to still kind of be a thing for like 20-year-olds. 25-year-olds even. Even I remember our parents used to go to Halloween parties.
Yeah.
And they dress up like whatever politician or whatever current movie star or whatever it was. And I feel like no one can care about Halloween anymore because everyone knows about the solar system and like nuclear physics and Lebanon and the Middle East and Russia, and
because someone has an opinion on every outfit.
We're not supposed to know how big the world and how big the universe is. And now everyone knows that. All these documentaries about our universe and our planet and planet Earth. And like, you start to go, well, what does it really matter what goes on in this office then? Because look at how minuscule like the Earth is. There's an app everyone who's listening has to go download this app, especially you. It's just called the solar system. And it's this unbelievable model of the solar system where you can zoom in and you can click on planets and tiny dwarf planets and interstellar objects that are constantly, all these known objects that are circulating the sun. We think that it's just like bro, it is so not. There are thousands of things orbiting the sun.
Have you ever seen the video? It shows like, it kind of debunks basically anything for flat earthers, where it's like, well, why do we walk on flat ground if the Earth is round,
Right.
And it zooms out. So it starts with the globe basically, and then it zooms in super far in sort of like these clicks. And every click, you realize how the curvature is flattening out. Until it gets so small that you see the flatness of where we live and stand. And you're like, oh, wow. Like, it's crazy.
Well, it is. And it's just one of those things where if you know that that's real, if you know that there's this whole thing, there's a dwarf planet. Everyone thinks, everyone knows Pluto, right? But there are 4 dwarf planets. One of them is called Sedna, okay? And Sedna's orbit, it hasn't even made a full revolution around. How long, okay, you know how an Earth year is 365 days?
I do.
How long do you think a year is on Sedna? It's another dwarf planet orbiting the sun in the solar system. Just guess how long a year is.
Well, the further away it is, the longer the years are. Right?
Yeah. It's,
I don't know, probably some millions of...
Why do you gotta go? You always go over. You always go over.
Well, but you set me up for it.
I did. But a year is 11,600 years. That's how long it takes for it to do one revolution around the sun. So you know that, and you go, well, then wait a minute. So that means, first of all, how do they know that? Orbital dynamics.
That's what always fucking
is. They know from velocity.
They've never seen it pass.
From velocity, mass, and all these other calculations and whatever, but they know that it can only be going in one direction. And by the way, orbits, they're not circular, they're oval, right? So right now, Sedna is at its closest point to the sun, which is like astronomically farther than we are from the sun. But at its furthest point, it will be in like 6,000 years, basically undetectable, but still nonetheless orbiting the sun. And you know that thing's just out there right now. And then you go, do I really have to clock out for lunch? Like, you know what I mean, though? Yeah. I mean, I think that enough people have kind of caught up to the idea. We're not supposed to know all these things, I don't think. Because then, like, how am I supposed to get dressed for Halloween?
Well, I remember I asked I was interviewing people recently, like college students. It was like for an internship. And one question I always ask at the end of every interview is, what is the most interesting thing you've learned outside of this interview role, just in life? What's the most interesting you've learned in the last month or so? And this one girl, super smart, like Ivy League school, like architect, major, whatever, kind of stumbled on the question and was like, well, I recently learned about the Middle East and all of these things. And it was just like it was cute because, you know, she's a college student. She doesn't really know about a lot of things in the world, but she's like, I learned about the Middle East and how things go on there, and that it's really important to know about. And I learned about culture and things. And I was just like, okay.
Mm-hmm. And she probably doesn't even know that the Middle East has been an issue for God knows how long, right? Like, it's funny, like Joe Rogan just, he recommended a song. We talked about it called Fuck a War by the Ghetto Boys.
Yeah.
And there's a lyric in that song where he says, I believe it's, they're lucky I ain't the president because I would nuke Iraq and I would blow that little shit off the map or whatever like that. And it's like, oh, so even in like 1986, Iraq and Pakistan, all these places were still as much of a part of the news to be mentioned in like pop culture as they are today. So like, you know, again, these things have been going on for decades. And yeah, so having said all this, by the way, I did meet a gentleman today who I got friendly with. I never met him before, but he said that his daughter is, he had a Harvard dad like sticker on his toolbox. And I was like, one of your kids goes to Harvard? He's like, yeah, my daughter is 20 years old. She's doing so well. She's so smart. She's brilliant. And I was like, wow, what is she majoring in? He said astrophysics.
Jesus.
And I was like, she's going to Harvard for astrophysics? He was like, yeah, she's brilliant. Why will I not forget? I took her to see Interstellar, and she's calling all these things out. She's like, that instrument wouldn't be there. That wouldn't be there in the space. Wow. There's no reason for that thing to be there. So, like, having said all the things I said, there are obviously still brilliant 20-year-old kids out there. She's going to do fine.
She's not listening to this show.
She ain't listening to this show. And if she is, she's going, Sedna. Yeah, that's true. He's right about that, actually. So, yeah, there's always that. But, so there's pros and cons to it. I just think that in a general sense, though, we know a little bit too much about the world, where things that used to be in this cute way kind of appreciated are no longer appreciated, Not to sound like a guy who's damn the phones.
You always sound like that.
I always sound like that. And now that I got the mustache, it's like, forget it.
So speaking of, knowing too much about the world, on our last episode, you went viral for...
I did.
For reciting multiple movie quotes, and the internet was asking for more.
They were.
But before we get into that, because we will do, and I will.
They asked. This has to be a segment,
and I took requests. So I have a request for Keith that he does not know is coming, that I want to see and test him if he can do a movie quote. But before I get into that, because one thing I always think about is kind of people who have like very unique skill sets or talents. And I saw this one thing. Eric Weinstein has a term. I don't know if he coined it, but it's high agency people.
Yeah.
And how you identify high agency people. And the way he described it was basically, it's a person who, when they get denied at a club by the bouncer, do they just accept that as, oh, okay, well, I'm going to go home? Or is that where the engine starts firing in their brain and they start figuring out other ways and paths to find a way to get into that club? The club obviously is a metaphor in this case, but it's basically people who are able to use their own unique skill set, whether it's verbal acuity, mentally thinking in different parameters, using their body or their unique, assets to their advantage. And I thought that was really interesting, which is like high agency people. And if you're lucky enough, you might only know one or two people that you would really consider high agency. And this guy, George Mack, who's a writer on the internet, who's been on Chris Williamson a bunch of times, he actually came up with a list of 6 ways you can identify high agency people. And I wanted to share with you.
Sure.
What those were, because I think they're really interesting. And I think this is just a
well,
cool
while you pull
topic.
that up, it's very true. Like, it reminds me of that scene in The Wolf of Wall Street, when he's going around the table putting together a team of salesmen.
Yeah.
And he's like, sell me this pen, that whole scene. And the guy just creates urgency by saying, write your name down on that piece of paper, which everyone else is like, well, the pen, oh, it's beautiful. It's the best pen in the world. Yeah. All these things that make you not give a shit about a pen. But then he created this, again, thinking outside the box. Now you need a pen.
Yeah.
I created a situation for you to need one. Now I'm going to sell you one.
So
that's agency.
Yeah. So let me list this. I'll list out the 6 of them, and then we can talk about whichever one we want to. But George Mack on Twitter, he wrote, how to spot high agency people. Number 1, weird teenage hobbies. So teenage years are the hardest time to go against social pressures. If they can go against the crowd as a teenager, they can likely go against the crowd as an adult. Thought that was interesting. The second one is energy distortion field. If you meet with them when you're tired and defeated, you leave the room ready to run a marathon on a treadmill with max incline. 3, golden question. If you're in a third world prison cell and had to call someone to get you out, who would you call? 4, you can never guess their opinions. That's self-explanatory. But a boxer that writes poetry, the advertiser is obsessed with the history of war, the beauty queen who reads Nietzsche. If their beliefs don't line up with their stereotypes, they've exercised agency. Number 5 is immigrant mentality. If they've moved from their hometown, that's a good sign. If they've moved from their home country, that's an even greater sign. It takes agency to spot you're in the wrong place, resourcefulness to operationalize a move, and a growth mindset to start from zero in a new location. Number 6, they send you niche content. High agency people just look at the content. They spot upcoming trends very early. There's actually a 7th. They're mean to your face, but nice behind your back.
Wow. I like that one.
Yeah. So I think
that's a real friend.
The one that really, the one that really interested me. I think the golden question is the most interesting, which is like, if you were in a third world country in a prison, who would you call? That's probably the easiest answer to who your most high agency friend is. But I like the one about weird teenage hobbies.
Yeah. Well,
that was one where I tried to ask a question without asking a question.
Yeah. Well, I'm not somebody who, I'm not saying I'm high agency, but like, the reason I got good at even doing those movie scenes was because for whatever reason, I don't know why, but like I've always known rather that if you can talk articulately, intelligently, you can probably get away with a lot. You can get yourself out of sticky situations that you might find yourself in, and you're much more able to have a comfortable seat at any given table. So I worked really hard at that. I would recite George Carlin, bits and monologues, and I would recite scenes where the actor is particularly, I can tell it would take them a long time to memorize that. So I would always try to memorize that. And I don't know why, but it just made me feel like, okay, now I'm more prepared to speak when I'm, in a situation. Like I've been in trouble so many times, and I've had people looking at me from across a desk, like, explain yourself how many times. And I've always gotten away with things because if you have I think that if you were ever in a third world country or a POW, I think I might be on your list of people to call. Yeah. Because I could probably talk, if assuming I knew the language and all that stuff, had a translator, I could probably bullshit you to get out of there. Bullshit your way out of there. Yeah. I could. I bet I could. Especially if it's life or death or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the weird teenage hobbies, like going against the grain, like you said. I mean, I was growing up in the time of like Sean John and like, wiggers and like, people like wearing like ridiculous clothes. And I was always just wearing like a t-shirt and jeans. And I was like, I'm not going with anything. I am doing my own thing, listening to my music. And I think that people, whether they knew it or not to speak only about me, but who else could I speak about? It's like they kind of respected that without knowing it. It's like, oh, this, like, not that, oh, Keith doesn't care, but like, it's just that he's who he is. Yeah. And there's something about that you can rely on, Yeah, and
I think that's something remarkable that
Jules said it on our episode with Jules Ryan, he said, Keith's been the same person. Like, he's always been this way. Yeah. And there's a reliability there, you know?
Yeah, because it's interesting where I think in my teenage years, I definitely tried a bunch of different sort of, I tried like a skateboarding phase. I tried like a punk phase, like a rapper phase, like a preppy phase. I could sort of tried on all these different outfits. And I think what the high agency list is basically saying is like, who's one person who just like had some weird, niche when they were 13 and they've just been that way ever since. Like they never really wavered. And they probably got made fun of for being into, freaking playing electric violin or something, but they were still cool and they hung out and got asked to parties and stuff. Yes. So it's like, who are the guys that like, just had weird hobbies, but always stuck to sort of their own, they rode their own wave, for lack of a better term. They had weird opinions, weird interests and stuff, but they never sort of bucked to the social pressures to like fit in. Essentially.
Well, and the thing is too, when you do that, you eventually get so good at that people just respect that. Like we've known now from doing content, making videos and whatever, it's always the ones that do well are the ones where we're talking about something that we really know a lot about. And people just like to watch people be good at stuff. That's what it comes down to. Nobody cares about anything really in particular. Like, for example, we've called it competency porn. I can watch anybody do anything if they're really good at it.
Oh, on
bowling.
I don't have TikTok anymore, but I used to watch a guy who just like scrubbed the dishes really well. And I'm like, why am I watching this? But he was so good at it that I was like, this is amazing.
I was watching a woman the other day. She was cracking open pearls. Clams to get pearls. And you know what I mean? Like, because she was just doing it so efficiently and so over and over again in this way that you're like, that's somebody who's been doing this for 25 years and they've mastered it. That's something that people just like to see.
Well, we talked about this in a car ride recently, but I thought it was an interesting point to bring up potentially on the podcast, which is you said like your interest when you were younger was basically to learn how to be more articulate and figure out a way to speak eloquently in a way that you felt intellectually that you could stand toe to toe with people. For me, I have always taken pride in doing that same thing, but in the written word.
Yes.
So I never sought out to be a writer. It was just something that through reading books, it just interested me to start writing my own ideas.
It's sacred, the written word.
Yeah. Like for you,
the pen is mightier than the sword.
Yeah. Like, well, for you do it on this podcast too. Like you sort of figure out what you're thinking by speaking it out loud.
Yeah.
Where I need to sit behind a keyboard and like type out like, how do I think about this? And I'll write, a really long like essay or paragraph and just verbal vomit everything I can think of, like sleep on it. And then I come back the next day and I, delete 70% of it and then figure out, oh, here's what I was actually trying to say. It's almost like carving something out of stone or chiseling it, where I'm like slowly getting away.
You are.
Getting rid of all the shit that isn't what I actually believe.
I have to recommend everyone on the show who's listening to the show to seriously, and I mean it, like actually really read Kyle's newsletter. You'll be so impressed with his abilities, his writing ability. It's truly an enjoyable, easy flow of text. It's not like, here's my list of things that I like. You have a way of bringing somebody in. Like, I know that you are schooled in some sense with writing. You've taken courses and you've done that, but you can tell it's professional. It's something that you've worked really hard at, and it's something I could never do. I tried to write. I was like, well, let me try and write a newsletter or a blog. Dude, it's so not something everyone can do. Just how talking off the cuff is something not everyone can do.
Yeah, well, I think I don't know how much of it is schooling. Like I took one semester of NYU writing course, and I took that when I was like 26. So I had been writing before that.
But you got that foundation, I think.
But I think it's similar to what you have done, which is a lot of it is just accumulating and consuming content.
You're watching the masters
that you admire, right? You admire George Carlin and Jim Carrey and all these guys who can do these crazy monologues super articulately. And so you've sort of just ingrained that in your brain. Same thing with me. I've read so many books and I've read all those words that I can sort of copy and steal styles and techniques until eventually it kind of becomes your own. And then that's what I think the value of talking more and writing more is, and consuming more, I think is really important, because it sort of just fills the grooves in your brain. And this guy Austin Kleon wrote a book called Steal Like an Artist, where any great artist, you take the greatest artists of all time, the Beatles, Michael Jackson, whoever, they started out by stealing or copying other people until eventually they got so good at
they were all cover bands
style,
of blues artists, really.
They created their own style from that foundation.
Yeah.
So to get back to the main event, which was the
segment,
the amount of volume of comments, likes, shares, and everything on every social media was the fact that you can essentially, and to me, honestly, I'm not even impressed by it anymore. I just laugh because I know your ability to just recite whatever I ask you to by command. But we got a few requests, so I wanted to give you one. And this, Keith, is not he does not know this request is coming. So I'm giving this by surprise. This is on command to see if he can do this on the podcast live. And the request was, because you said Jim Carrey is probably your best one. The request I got, because I want to see this, is Ace Ventura, the first one, the Miami Dolphins, when Jim Carrey speaks super fast about who Ray Finkel is and his whole bio.
Okay. Yes, I can. Thank God. I thought you were going to ask me to do Heinz Kit's Velvet, which I don't.
No,
I don't really.
You can do that.
I could do that, but that's a tough one because there's an accent and all that. Ray Finkel. Yeah, I got that. I can do that.
Is when they're
when he goes to the door.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right. I'll do. Okay. Here we go. He goes. Hi, I'm looking for Ray Finkel and a clean pair of shorts. What do you know about Ray Finkel? Soccer style kicker, graduated in Collier High, June 1976, Stenson University, honors graduate class of 1980. Holds 2 NCAA Division I records, one for most points in a season, one for distance. Formerly nicknamed the Mule, the first and only pro athlete to ever come out of Collier County, and one hell of a model American.
Damn.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to stumble on that one.
I got that one. And then
that's good.
I could do the rest of it, but that's the fast talking part.
Wow.
Well, like let me do, because like there was somebody else who requested. People like the fast talking Jim Carrey thing.
Yeah.
And
you do the one from When Nature Calls?
Yeah, there's 2 there.
I'm the one I'm thinking of is when he's in the room with all the heads on the wall.
Oh yeah. That's my favorite one. I'll do that one. Okay, that's a fine theory, Mr. Ventura. What does it got to do with me? I thought you'd never ask. The day I met you, there was a white substance on your shoe that I mistook for plaster. Yesterday, I saw the same white substance outside the hut where the bat was kept, and suddenly it hit me. The great white bat has great white guano. That's what you slipped in. That's what was on your shoe, and that explains the abrasion on your palm. Let me run that back for you. Squart nay mog ned boom bot nared mog sned boom bot nog mayered bio dare yet. That's what you slipped in. That's what was on your shoe, and that explains the abrasion on your palm. Damn, I'm good. Can you feel that, buddy? Can you feel it, Captain Compost? The day of redemption is at hand. Repent, and thou shalt be saved. Yeah.
God damn. I don't know what's more impressive, the fact that you can do that or the fact that Jim Carrey...
Well, he did that in front of a whole camera crew and all that shit. Yeah, the fast talking shit is really impressive. I don't know how... Like, when I was first learning that shit as a kid, I was like... It was impossible.
Yeah. It was like liar. There's like so many times when he does that stuff too.
Yeah. Liar, that one is... Wait. Hold on. I'm just going to do this because there was a woman who begged me to do this.
When he gets pulled over?
When he gets pulled over.
Okay.
Do you know why I pulled you over? It depends on how long you were following me. Eesh! Why don't we just take it from the top? Here it goes. I sped. I followed too closely. I ran a stop sign. I almost hit a Chevy. I sped some more. I failed to yield at a crosswalk. I changed lanes in the intersection. I changed lanes without signaling while running a red light and speeding. Oh my God, I almost ran out of breath. Is that all? No. I have unpaid parking tickets. Oh, and they fly out. Brilliant. Be gentle. Yeah. Rent free up here.
My brother sent me a video the other day of like what the most like quotable lines from movies from like the 90s.
Yeah.
There was so it was all Jim Carrey, like Home Alone stuff. Just like the little lines in the movies that you totally forget about that are so good.
There's too many. There's too many.
And keep the change, you filthy animal. Like those little ones that. Yeah. Did we talk about this? I don't want to beat a horse if we talked about it. How movies are just critical to watch as a kid.
We did. But well, getting back to the dad thing, you know, look, I mean, I will expand on that though. Like, we talked about how movies are critical, but I want to recommend to you when you do have your child that no movies 1 hour or half an hour before they go to sleep. Because then they're invested in something and they don't want to go to bed. They're like, I'm watching a fucking movie. You can't make me go to bed now. So just shut that shit off. Give them an hour of like, and you know, the kids are, Ben Shapiro has a great line. He goes, kids are not innately good, they're innately innocent. And I love that because it's very true. It's much more on the money. And what he means by that, I think, is that they're willing to do whatever is interactive with you. They want to just be with you and have a good time. They don't want to listen to you necessarily, though. They want to it's got to be interactive and engaging. So for that hour before they go to bed, I'd highly recommend just pulling out some books and something physical, whether it Legos, anything, just not the movie. Because they get very upset.
Well, that's my philosophy for myself. I don't really watch TV like an hour before bed.
The blue light and all that. I don't know how true that is and all that. I mean, how I slept every night with a blue light over my eyelids from the movies. That's the other thing, is that these would just run all night and I'd be asleep just subconsciously digesting the lines. But
that's actually true.
You know what I mean?
Sleepovers, I'd wake up at 3 a.m. with Dumb and Dumber playing.
Oh yeah, of course. So but that's a big tip.
The other thing I heard Ben Shapiro say, which I thought was cool, or just a unique thought that you would have. He said, so when you're single, you have a happiness range of 0 to 10. When you're single, you're in your early 20s. You have a good day. Maybe it's a 9 out of 10. You have a bad day. It's a 3 out of 10.
This is great.
He goes, when you get married and you have a spouse, that range expands from -10 to 10. So when you have a really good day with you and your spouse and you're in love and everything's clicking and you guys just feel amazing and everything is enjoyable, you're laughing together, it's a 10 out of 10. But when you're at a conflict and something's wrong and you guys are at each other's heads, arguing and stuff, it's a -10. That feeling of dread when you've upset your partner or vice versa, it's a -10. He says when you introduce kids to the picture, that scale just becomes limitless. You can either have the happiest moments of your life with your kids, or when your kids are suffering or bothering you, it's unlimitless pain and just suffering.
I think what he was saying, I love this, and it's true because I never thought about it. He was the highs when you're single can only get so high. Even on great day when you were single compared to when you are a family man with your kids, it would reach, you'd be happy. But for me, it's true that I would always kind of feel well, okay, but I'm still in this transitional period. I can't do this forever, what I'm doing right now. So as happy as I am and as good as a day as I did have, it's still not this fully meaningful happy, when your wife and your kids and everybody's on the same page having a good time. That is a level of happy that is so, you're so content with that.
Yeah.
In your soul, you're content. But when you're having a good day, when you're single, it's not a content happy. It's more I had fun today. But what's fun,
Yeah, Jordan Peterson had I'm not going to be able to do it justice whatsoever, so I'm not even going to attempt it. But he had a really interesting point about happiness and how stupid and trivial it is of a pursuit, because what is happiness?
Right.
What you think is happy for you might not even be something that I'd consider would make me happy. Right. So happiness is completely subjective. But contentedness, or having a meaning and a purpose and feeling fulfilled with sitting on the couch with your spouse and your kids and just enjoying that moment, on a happiness scale, maybe it's not hedonistically chugging beers with Avicii in Ibiza,
that's fun.
That's really happy and awesome. But from a contentedness and meaningful standpoint, that is the maximum of being on the couch with your kids, having a good time, just laughing and giggling.
Right.
All right.
Let's wrap it up.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye.